What's up, everybody? This is Don Ward with Third Creative, and I'm excited to be back doing another walkthrough template tutorial. If you're watching this, that means that you might be interested in the Coyote Basketball 2018 template bundle, or maybe even better yet, maybe you've already picked it up. Either way, this will be a good opportunity to see what you can do with this template. There's a few ins and outs, things that will just help things go a little smoother, help you get it customized just right for what you're doing. So I'm going to try again to shorten these videos up with this one. Wish me luck. I don't know if it'll work out, but let's jump right in and get started. This is the vertical version. Basically anything that I demonstrate here is going to pretty much apply to the horizontal version or the panoramic version. It's pretty much all the same elements, so whatever we're working on here, same thing for the others. Let's go ahead and strip it down and get all the way down to this bottom folder where I like to start off background. As you see here, we've got the glowing lines for basketball court. We've got the 3-point line, we've got the free throw lane, the free throw line and circle. So you're going to want to start off by customizing this to the colors and the look that you want, and you actually have quite a few options. And if you're experienced in Photoshop and you know, you've got a higher skill level, you might be able to jump in here and figure all this out, no problem. If you're more of a beginner, or maybe you just know the basics, this is really going to be helpful. So let's just start at the bottom of this folder. We've got a subfolder here where we've got our floor. So you see, you turn that off, it goes away. Got a few options for coloring the floor. This top one I went ahead and set up so that you can pick a color, one that matches your team. Let's turn that off. This can look pretty cool too, just completely grayscale black and white. So if that's a look you want to go with, then you can just turn them both off. But I went ahead and added this other one. This is kind of a natural wood color. Not that you couldn't go up here and pick that out, but maybe it might save you a little time. If you like this somewhat natural wood color, you can just go to this, or you can double click here, open it up, and maybe you can fine tune it. Maybe you want a little more darker, a little more saturated. So you have that option, but if you want to pick a color, it's the same thing. We'll use this top one and we'll double click on this color overlay, and we'll pick a color you know, that you like. You can go all over the place. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward so far. We're going to stick with this red. Now, this next folder, court lines, this one is an important one because I've got it set up this way where you can see the color saturation in a certain section, but I have set this up so that you can modify and customize that in several different ways. So we're going to open this up. Start off, I guess, right here with this first color overlay. If you want your lines to be colored, you'll want to turn this on. As you can see, it's default to red, but just like the rest, you can double click here and you can change it. You know, whatever looks good. If you like the white, you can leave it turned off. The next two folders, this is important. This first folder just has the lines, and it has all of your effects that give it this. If you zoom in, you can actually see, you know, like a bevel and the glow, the inner, the outer glow. And if you're really experienced with Photoshop, you could actually use these filters here to go in and change it to color. I wanted to kind of simplify it a little bit, and that's why I went with this color overlay. But you actually have two options there. Now these lines, the sections within them, I have created hue/saturation adjustment layers that affect all of the different sections of this court. And if you ever decide that you want to scale these up or scale these down or move anything around, it's very important that you do it with this folder selected. If you start moving things around with just this folder, the contents in it, or just this folder, the contents in it, these aren't going to match up with the lines. Everything's going to be out of whack. Hopefully, you know, you still have the original saved, like a master file you can always get back, or maybe go in your history and get back. But just to save you all that hassle and all that time, if you're going to scale it down, move it around, make sure you select this folder when you do so. But back to this. This is pretty cool, or at least I think so. Let's go ahead and turn this one on. We've got them all turned on. So basically what that does is that desaturates every section. But you can pick and choose what sections you want to be saturated with color. So you do so by turning the respective layer off, so it won't desaturate it. So we can go with the free throw circle and the line. We can go with the lane. You can go with the outer beyond 3-point line, and of course inside the 3-point line. So you have complete control of what is color, what is not. But let's actually take it a step further. This is pretty cool. So let's just pick one. Let's say the free throw lane. Let's leave that on, but let's say you want it to be lighter than the rest. All of these are hue/saturation adjustment layers. If you double click here on the square, you'll get this. So as you can see, I've got the saturation by default all the way down, and that's why you can't see the color. If you want a little bit of saturation, just turn it up a little bit. If you want a lot of saturation, you can increase it. So you have control there. But also you have control of the lightness and the darkness. I've got this darkness slid down to -34, but let's say you want it a little bit lighter than the rest. You can adjust it, maybe a little darker than the rest. You've got all kinds of options here and control if you want it. Now, not everybody's probably going to want to go in and start playing with all of that. If you're in a hurry and you like the way I have it set up by default, you don't have to mess with any of this. You can just leave it like I have it by default. Come in here. When you open this background folder, really, you can just jump straight to this color overlay, pick your color, close that folder, move on. Pretty simple. The last two layers in here, I've got a vignette. These are exposure. I've got the exposure drawn down, and I've got it masked out in a way that it will create this vignette. So you can turn them off and you can see the effect that it has. So maybe you don't want the vignette, you can turn them off, but just like anything else, you can actually control the level of it. So maybe you just want less of a vignette effect. Double click here, you'll see the exposure's drawn way down. You can drag it up, get a little bit less. That's quite a bit less. But you can fine tune this, you know, however you want it. And same thing for this darkened bottom. So I did that to kind of create an extra darkness back there, you know, which is optional. That's pretty much for the background folder. Let's keep it moving along. We've got our top text. This one will be real quick, real simple. So I've got set up, this is basically player name, and we've got senior, and I think I have sophomore in there as well. You can turn that off if you don't want that or need that. Not everything is high school where you'll need the class. You can change it to something else, if maybe their position, or just turn them off. But regardless of what you do there, these are pretty simple. I've got them set up where they have this one has an inner shadow and the color is controlled by gradient overlay. You can turn the gradient overlay off and you can go up to your text color and just pick a solid color if you like. I love to use gradient overlays with a lot of my elements, whether they're text or just anywhere. And if you're not familiar with that, it's real simple. Double click there and you can pick your gradient that works for you, or you can customize it. So, you know, maybe you want something red, click in here, bring up your window, and you can fine tune these you know, to your liking. But we'll go ahead and cancel that so we don't change anything. real simple, real straightforward. You can scale these up, scale these down. I like to use my character panel. You can play with the, there's a name for it. But basically the spacing in between the letters, you can see you can adjust that by dragging it up and down. Of course, you can affect the overall size. Let's go ahead and undo what I just did there. Yeah, cool. That's pretty much it there. Keep it moving. Top player. Let's turn that on. I've got this little thing here. I call it a twinkle, but you can see I put it right here on the white line close to his body. You can move it around wherever you want. You can turn it off. It's just a little extra effect. You can put it over here in the corner. Really just anywhere. You can duplicate these and put several around, but it's an option that's in there for a little extra. This is dark and lower. This is just a solid black layer, and I've got it masked out. So you can see it'll darken their legs. Now you might want this to be higher or lower. You might want it to be more of a hard transition or maybe a softer transition. You got a few options. You can always select the layer itself, use your arrow keys, move it up and down, because the bottom, if you remember down here, we've got this darkened bottom. It's going to be basically black on black, but I recommend that you use this gradient mask. So it's a mask. If you go to your gradient tool, as long as you're on black to white, white to black, you can adjust it. Well, that's backwards, so I don't recommend that, but you get the idea. Let's undo that. All right, so you can control that. Of course, you drop your player image there. Now I've got this illuminate optional. So if you notice, look behind the player around the circle area. It's set to soft light, so it's real subtle. You can turn it off and on. You can adjust the saturation or opacity if you want little less or a little more of the effect. And that's pretty much it for the top player folder. Let's see, next one is a cool one. It's these corners, and I've set them up. Let's see, I'll tell you what I'll do. We'll go ahead and move it so you can kind of see they run off. They look like this, and you can scale them bigger or smaller or whatever you want to do. We won't keep that, and you can adjust them how you like them. But if you open them up, they're broken into two separate folders. We've got small corners, so you can see that it's got these outer smaller shapes or corners, both in this group, and you control the color and the stroke here on the folder rather than actually going in and adjusting them on the shape layers themselves. So I've got it set up with a stroke. If you want to colorize that stroke, double click there. It's a gradient. You pick your gradient and boom, you've got yellow. We don't want that though. We'll cancel that out. All right, same thing with the gradient overlay. I've got a black to gray. You can adjust that. So let's say you wanted to go with maybe a red like that, or this. And of course you can always fine tune it. And the same thing applies with the large ones. So I've got, one thing I didn't mention, you'll notice two gradient overlays. This one I've got set for color. If you turn this one off and you turn this one off, by default you always have that gray to black, which I think works pretty well. So you don't have to go in and change it if you don't want to. You just turn these off. But if you want to use color, turn both of them on or one or the other on, and you can modify the color. Same thing with the stroke. That's pretty much it there. So let's keep it moving. We're almost done. All right, we got bottom text layers. Let's open it up, turn it on. A few things here. Let's get in here and I guess just start at the top. We've got another twinkle flare you can see right here. Just a little extra spice. It's optional. So if you don't like it, you can turn it off. You can add more. You can move it, resize it, lower the opacity. I've got this one, which is sports. So this is this kind of slashy handwritten font. I don't know, I have this stroke here, which is set to black, which made it kind of thinner. You can add a stroke if you want to, but it's just set to a solid color, which is white. And I did add an inner shadow. So if you want to do a gradient, you can always add it. You just double click here, gradient overlay. Otherwise, you can just change the color right here in your character panel. Next one is team name. This one is a little tricky, so this is an important part to pay attention to, because changing the color of the team name is done probably a little different than what the norm is. And you know, even though I've figured a lot of things out in Photoshop over the last few years, there might be a better way, but just through trial and error, basically what I was trying to do is use this texture layer, clip it to the team name, and if we zoom in a little bit here, if it'll cooperate, there we go. What I was going for is kind of the bumps on a basketball. So I like that. If you don't like that, you don't have to use it. You can actually turn this texture layer off that's clipped. And let's see. Otherwise, if you do turn that off, then you can turn on this gradient overlay that's right here. Let's zoomed in too much. Let's fix that. There we go. All right. So where were we? If you don't like the texture, turn this off. It's set to default white. If you want to add a gradient, turn this on. You can go in and you can tweak it. If you are going to use the texture, you have to turn this gradient overlay off. And basically the problem I was running into, and maybe some of the Photoshop experts out there can enlighten me on a better way to do this, but by clipping this texture layer to this text layer, it covered up the gradient overlay that I have set. Now I've already got one added here, so you won't really see a big difference if I turn this on. But without this gradient overlay on here, it wasn't showing up. So you can see actually now, I've got them both turned on. You can't see that texture. This gradient overlay overrides that or supersedes it. If I turn it off, well, there we go. Now I see the texture. So long story short, if you want to keep that texture and you want to change the color, make sure you're on this green layer that's called texture, and you use this gradient overlay. So you can go in here and you can adjust your colors that way. I hope that makes sense. Keep it moving. We've got team name. You got a gradient overlay option if you want to use it. I have it set to just white, so you can change it either way. And then I have, let's see here. Well, actually, the school name is what I was referring to. This is the team name. Now, another thing, you'll see this little curve. A lot of you probably already know what that means, but I have this curvature to the text. If you put something in there that's longer, Nighthawks or Bobcats, or something that's longer, it may not look just right. You might have to modify it. So if you double click here and get your text layer highlighted, and you come up to the top to this icon here, warp text, we'll open that up. I've got it set to arch, and I've got the bend positive and negative. So let's say we wanted to decrease that bend a little bit. You just drag it down to your liking. Of course, you can go the other way if you want to, but you can tweak this so that it looks right, because I've got it set to something that looks good for the amount of letters and size that I have. But if you increase your character number, whatever name you have in here is bigger, you'll have to scale it down. That arch may not look right, and that's where you go in to correct it. And same with the layer that's above here for the school name. Double click here, come up to this, and tweak it. And let's see what else we got. We got team letter. This is optional. I did this, and you can change the letter to match whatever your school name is, or you can turn it off and maybe replace it with their logo. But it's an option there, and of course you can control the stroke, inner shadow, gradient, and then I've got year, and I've got it set up, in this case their season overlaps, and so I put both years. You can move it around and change it to just 1 year, whatever works for what you're doing. All right, making progress. Let's see, last one. Well, heck, that's it, except for crop guidelines. If you turn this on, I've got 4x6. This automatically works for 4x6, but let's say 8x10, 16x20. If you want to see, what's going to work, obviously we'd need to move some things around, make this work, but if you turn that on, you can see the area that you're working with and what will fit for these different crop dimensions. Whew, okay, cool. Well, I think I did go faster that time. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. Pretty much suck at doing these videos, but I want to do them. I want to get them out to you. I want to have something that will help anybody that needs it, and hopefully they will do just that. So anyways, if you haven't picked it up, head over to the website www.thirdcreative.com, and if you already have, thank you. I gotta be honest, I'm making this the day after I launched it, and this is by far has been the most successful launch of a template that I've had to date. Overwhelming response, and can't lie, that's a good feeling. So I appreciate each and every one of you. If you need me, Don at thirdcreative.com. Hit me up on Facebook, Don Ward, or the Facebook page, Third Creative. Get all kinds of options. Till next time, see ya.